Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to introduce our topic, the unspoken calculus, why accomplished men are opting out of marriage. Today, we'll explore a fascinating trend, how successful men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are choosing to bypass marriage, not out of anger or fear, but through a complex calculation. We'll look at the financial, legal, and psychological factors behind this shift, and discuss what's true, what's myth, and how men and couples can navigate these challenges while protecting their dignity, love, and assets. Let's get started. When we think about marriage, we often picture the vows, the flowers, the speeches, those romantic fairy tale elements. But if we strip all of that away, marriage is actually a legal contract. And that's a really important perspective to understand. This contract isn't just a piece of paper. It creates obligations, things you're legally required to do or accept. It also redistributes resources, assets, income, property, under certain conditions. And it connects private lives to external institutions like courts, tax laws, and enforcement mechanisms. For men who have built assets, careers, or reputations, this legal side can feel like a risky business deal. Because when you sign that marriage contract, you're also accepting exposure to divorce laws, alimony, child support, and the division of assets, things that can significantly impact your future. So, recognizing this legal dimension isn't about being cynical. It's about understanding what I call contract literacy, being aware of the legal consequences tied to emotional decisions. This perspective helps us see marriage not just as a romantic union, but as a serious legal commitment with real implications. Let's talk about the math that often scares people and why numbers really do matter. You see, statistics are frequently reduced to simple slogans, like 56% divorce rate, but the real point isn't just the percentage itself. It's about the order of magnitude, how big the issue actually is. A large portion of marriages either end in separation or stay in a dysfunctional state for years. And when you consider the hidden costs, legal fees, lost productivity, emotional toll, forced asset liquidation, and ongoing support obligations, the downside of a failed marriage can be truly overwhelming. What's crucial to understand here is that risk isn't just about the probability of something happening. It's about what you're exposed to if it does. For someone with substantial assets, even a low-probability event like divorce can have catastrophic consequences. That's why many men see marriage as an asymmetric bet, a small potential upside but a very large potential loss. Now, if we look at the chart, it shows that a significant portion of marriages either end in separation or remain stuck in dysfunction for years. This visual really highlights the perceived risks involved, especially when you factor in all the long-term implications. So, understanding these numbers and what they represent helps us grasp why the stakes are so high, and why careful consideration and risk management are essential in this context. Humans are naturally wired to form pair bonds, and this tendency is reinforced both biologically and culturally. There's a real biological drive to seek out close relationships, but culture also plays a huge role in shaping and supporting this with rituals like weddings and anniversaries, as well as social signals that indicate status and approval. These cultural practices help solidify the idea that being in a couple is desirable and valuable. However, neither biology nor culture can fully eliminate the underlying incentive problems in long-term relationships. For example, the intense romantic chemistry we feel, what we often call falling in love, is driven by neurochemistry, and that feeling is incredibly powerful, but it's also temporary. Over time, sustaining a healthy relationship depends more on compatibility, shared goals, and clear expectations rather than just initial chemistry. And here's a key point. When couples avoid honest conversations about money, power, and contingency plans, basically, when they ignore the economic realities, they risk creating a disconnect between how they feel and what's actually happening in their relationship. This mismatch can lead to future conflicts and challenges. So, understanding these biological and cultural influences is crucial, but addressing the real incentive and economic issues is essential for long-term success. Let's talk about the idea of money and marriage. It's often misunderstood as gold digging, but really, it's about value exchange. Every relationship involves some form of giving and taking. Resources like financial stability, time, or social status are part of that. Labeling this as greed doesn't help. Instead, it's more accurate to see modern romantic relationships as a kind of social and economic contract. When these economic terms are hidden, misunderstood, or unevenly distributed, conflicts tend to arise. For example, you often see older, wealthier partners with younger, attractive partners. This might look superficial at first, but it's actually a clear exchange of resources for companionship or reproductive value. Being transparent about that can be healthier than pretending economics don't play a role. The real danger, though, is delusion, believing that money doesn't matter when it does, or thinking that feelings alone will always outweigh incentives. Recognizing this helps us understand the true dynamics at play in relationships today. Let's talk about prenups. And no, they're not a sign of giving up on love. Instead, think of them as a smart risk management tool. Similar to insurance or a shareholder agreement in a company, a prenup helps clarify expectations, allocate risks, and reduce the chances of conflicts ending up in court. A good prenup clearly defines what stays separate and what becomes joint property. It sets expectations ahead of time for support and how assets will be divided if certain events occur, like illness, business failure, relocation, or even decisions about having children. Importantly, it forces couples to have honest conversations about money, roles, and future plans before emotions run high. If you value transparency and fairness, framing a prenup as mutual protection makes sense. It's not about rejecting love, but about acknowledging that love and law operate on different levels. It's about being mature and responsible, ensuring both partners are protected and prepared for whatever the future holds. Many men, surprisingly, stay in marriages that are effectively over, even if they haven't gone through divorce. Not all relationship failures are visible in the official statistics. Some men remain legally married, but are emotionally and psychologically deadened, trapped in long-term dissatisfaction. These are what I like to call the walking dead scenarios, and they come with real costs. First, there's the loss of autonomy and the postponement of their own life plans. They may have dreams and goals, but these get pushed aside, sometimes indefinitely. Then there's emotional deterioration, things like depression, addiction, and isolation. When you're stuck in a marriage that no longer serves you emotionally, it's easy to slip into these states. We also have to consider the economic aspect. Sometimes, staying in the marriage seems like the cheaper option in the short run, but over time, it eats away at a person's financial well-being and future stability. And here's the tricky part. These casualties are often invisible socially. The couple keeps up the facade of a happy marriage, so others don't see what's really going on. That invisibility can make it even harder for men to break free because cultural pressures to stay together, no matter what, are strong. Understanding these hidden casualties is crucial because it highlights that not all marital issues are out in the open, and many men are suffering silently. Recognizing this helps us see the broader picture of what long-term entrapment can do to an individual's life. When it comes to alternatives to traditional marriage, especially for men who want to pursue relationships and build families without exposing themselves to full legal commitments, there are several pragmatic options worth considering. One approach is cohabitation with tailored agreements. These are legal arrangements that can specify how property is divided, how financial contributions are handled, and what the exit strategy looks like, so you can live together without tying the knot but still have clarity and protection. If having children is part of the plan, formal co-parenting agreements are another valuable tool. These agreements, ideally crafted with legal input, can clearly outline custody arrangements, financial responsibilities, education plans, and how decisions will be shared, helping to prevent conflicts down the road. Layered legal protections are also important. You can set up trusts, business entity structures, post-nuptial agreements, and detailed estate plans. These help safeguard your assets while still allowing you to be in a committed partnership without the traditional marriage framework. Then there are relationship contracts. These are explicit agreements you review periodically, say annually or after major life events. They help ensure both partners stay aligned on financial arrangements and mutual expectations over time. For those who value the social or religious recognition of marriage but want to protect their interests, marrying with a strong prenup is a solid option. A carefully negotiated prenup can give both of you peace of mind, knowing that your assets and interests are protected even if the relationship changes. Overall, these alternatives provide flexible, practical ways to pair and parent while minimizing potential catastrophic downside. They align with our broader discussion about creating intentional, protected relationships that suit modern life. Let's walk through some practical steps to have the adult conversation when considering a long-term partnership. First, it's important to inventory assets and liabilities. Both partners should fully disclose their financial situation. This openness helps build trust and clarity from the start. Next, discuss career and child plans. Think about who might pause or reduce work and consider the financial implications of those decisions. Planning for business ownership is also key. Clearly define any premarital business interests and future contributions to avoid conflicts later on. Drafting agreements early is another vital step, whether it's a prenup, cohabitation agreement, or parenting contract. Having these documents in place before issues arise can save a lot of stress down the line. It's equally important for each partner to consult independent counsel, ensuring that both have legal advice and that the process feels fair. Set periodic reviews, life changes, and so should your plans. Regular check-ins help keep your agreement aligned with your evolving situation. Don't forget to talk about values, not just numbers. Discuss your lifestyles, financial priorities, and what partnership truly means to both of you. And remember, framing protection positively makes a big difference. It's about mutual insurance, not distrust. It's about safeguarding your shared future together. Now, I'd like to address some common objections. Some say prenups are unromantic, but real love involves making choices freely. A prenup can actually support that freedom. Others argue that discussing finances reduces love to economics, but recognizing financial realities can prevent conflicts that might erode your relationship over time. Finally, many believe that most marriages work, but often that's because of sacrifices or compromises that leave one partner worse off. Surviving isn't the same as thriving together. These steps are about creating a foundation for mutual flourishing, not just survival. So to wrap things up, I want to emphasize that evolution, not apocalypse, is what we're witnessing here. Men walking away from marriage isn't necessarily a sign of moral failure or social decay. In fact, it can be seen as adaptive behavior. When institutions impose high, asymmetric risks on certain participants, rational actors, like men, will often choose to avoid those risks or push for different terms. And this, in turn, pressures institutions to evolve. We see this happening through clearer laws, better protections for both partners, normalized risk-sharing agreements, and cultural conversations that recognize money and attachment as part of the same human experience. Now, if you're a man or any partner trying to decide whether marriage is right for you, the honest checklist is pretty straightforward. Know what you're signing up for, understand both the potential upsides and downsides. Protect your dignity, and make sure that consent is truly informed. If you can't have these hard conversations before tying the knot, then you're starting off on the wrong foot. Remember, the future of partnership might look different from the model our grandparents knew, but that doesn't mean it can't be better. It can be safer, fairer, and more intentional. And that intentionality, being deliberate about our choices, is really the deepest expression of maturity and love.